We are doing adding and subtracting fractions today. We're going to start very quickly with just a review of adding and subtracting like fractions, and then we're going to move into adding and subtracting unlike fractions. So, to add and subtract like fractions, remember you just simply add and subtract straight across. The denominator stays the same. We do not say 8 plus 8 and get 16. It's different than multiplication. So 7 plus 3 gives us 10, and the denominator will stay as 8. I can reduce that and get 5/4, and then I could leave it that way, or I could write that as 1 1/4. Either way would be acceptable. Then on the other one, when we subtract, again, it's not 15 minus 15, it just stays as 15, but 6 minus 2 gives us 4. We cannot reduce that at all, so it just stays as 4 over 15. So I think you guys have probably done that before in the past, and so you're probably okay with that. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. We are going to go ahead and move straight into adding and subtracting unlike fractions. So let's take a look at adding and subtracting unlike fractions. To add and subtract unlike fractions, we are going to need to start with finding a common denominator. So there's a couple of steps involved in this common denominator process. So to start this, what we're going to have to do is find a common multiple between the multiple denominators that we're going to have. So let's start with just an example of, we're going to add 3/5 and 1/3. Now we cannot add just straight across. We cannot do just 5 plus 3 and get 8, 1 plus 3 and get 4. We have to get a like denominator down here. So what we want to do is figure out what is a common multiple between 5 and 3. To get a common multiple, essentially what we want to kind of look at is the easiest way, if you have simple numbers like this, is just to multiply the two of them. So looking at that, a multiple, remember, is the product of a number and another number. So the multiple of 5 would be 15, and the multiple of 3 would be 15. So if I change both of these denominators to 15, well, to get 5 into 15, I had to multiply by 3. So I also have to multiply the top by 3. It's kind of like our golden rule in algebra. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Except this time, it's top and bottom. So 3 times 3 gives me 9. 1 and 3, I multiply this by 5. Which means I have to multiply this by 5. So that gives me 5. Then I can add, like we did last section, 9 plus 5 gives me 14, and we end up with 14 over 15. And so we're going to do some more complex examples of finding different multiples, but for now, that's the initial piece there. Alright, so for this next one, and again, we're going to get to some where we're going to do negatives and positives. So for this next one, we're going to be adding negative 5/8 plus 1/6. So we'll worry about the negative here in a minute. The first thing we have to do is to figure out how do we get these to be like denominators. So if you recall, like I said before, we're looking for the least common denominator, which would be the least common multiple between them. So just to kind of reiterate, so if I go to an aside here, multiples of 6 are going to be 6, 12, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. Those are all multiples of 6. Now the multiples of 8 are going to be 8, 16, 24. These two match, so that's my least common multiple. So that is what I want to make these fractions into. So when I rewrite these fractions, I want them to have a denominator of 24, because I don't want to make it bigger than it has to be. I want to try to keep everything relatively small. So you don't have to write that out every time, but you want to be thinking that in your head. What's the smallest number that both of these numbers go into? So 8 times 3 gives me 24, so 5 times 3 gives me 15. Whatever I multiply this by to get that denominator, I have to also multiply the numerator by. Well, 6 times 4 gives me 24, so I have to multiply the numerator by 4. So negative 15. So this negative, you can kind of view that as going with the top number there. So negative 15 plus 4. Remember, you're in debt 15 and you add 4 to it. Negative 15 plus 4 gives me a negative 11. And then my denominator just stays the same. So keep in mind those rules for adding and subtracting negatives. If the signs are different, you subtract and keep the sign of the higher number. If the signs are the same, you add and keep the sign. Let me give you one more example, and then I'm going to have you do a couple of these on your own. So the next one I want to go over is going to be mixed numbers. So for instance, if we have 9 3/5 minus 7 2/3. The easiest way to do this would be to, again, just like when we multiplied and divided, rewrite these as improper fractions. So to do that, 5 times 9 is 45, plus 3 gives us 48 over 5, minus 3 times 7 is 21, plus 2 is 23, all over 3. So now we need these to be like denominators. So again, 5 and 3, the least common multiple is 15. So 5 times 3 means I have to do 48 times 3, which is going to give me 144. And then 3 times 5, which means I have to do 23 times 5. Give me 115. And when I subtract those two numbers, again, denominator stays the same, and the top number is going to give us 29. And then you can rewrite that as a mixed number again, and so it's going to be 1 and 14 over 15. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and give you several different ones I would like you to try on your own, and then just like normal, I'll put the answers up here for you to double check. But make sure not to, don't fast forward and just wait for me to do it. Actually try these and then just check your answers. So the first one's going to be negative 5/9 plus 1/6. The second one is going to be 7/8. 7/8 plus a negative 1/7. And the last one is going to be 2 3/5 plus 3 and 4/7. So go ahead and try each of these, and then I'll put the answers up there after a minute or two. Alright, there are your three answers. So in the first one, our common denominator was 18. Another common one that might have stuck out was 36. So either one is okay, it's just there might be some simplification that has to take place if you use 36 at the end. But anyway, so I multiplied 9 by 2 and 6 by 3, which means the numerator above 9 got multiplied by 2, and the same thing multiplied by 3 with the 1. So I was negative 10 over 18 plus 3 over 18, and then negative 10 plus 3 is a negative 7. So my answer is a negative 7/18. On the next one, between 8 and 7, my common denominator is 56. So I multiplied the first fraction by 7 over 7. So 7 times 7 is 49. The second one, I multiplied it by 8, which means that negative 1 times 8 is negative 8. 49 plus a negative 8, which really means 49 minus 8 is 41. And so the answer is 41 out of 56. And the last one, I converted them to improper fractions first. So 5 times 2 plus 3 is 13. 3 times 7 plus 4 is going to give us 25. The common denominator is 35, so the first one got multiplied by 7. So 13 times 7 is 91. The The second one got multiplied by 5, so 25 times 5 is 125. When I add those, I get 216, and when I divide that out, we end up with 6 and 6/35. So those are your 3 answers there, so make sure you have those. Bring any questions to class, and to make sure you have all the examples copied down and completed.